What would you do if the place you called home felt like a prison every single day? My name is Grace Parker. I'm 26 years old now, and I live in a quiet apartment with too many locks on the doors and a lamp that stays on through the night because darkness still feels like a threat. I have a decent job, good friends who call me family, and a therapist who reminds me every week that healing isn't a straight line. People see me and think I'm strong. They think I survived, but some memories don't stay in the past. They return in the silence, in the moments before sleep, when the world becomes too still. That's when I'm 16 again. That's when I'm locked in that room. It started 3 months after Mom remarried. We moved into his house, my stepfather's, a beautiful 2-story place with big windows and a porch swing that creaked when the wind moved it. To neighbors, he was a loving husband, the kind of man who mowed the lawn before sunrise and held doors open for everyone. But the truth was hidden in the walls. There was a room upstairs at the end of the hallway. It was painted a soft yellow, with lace curtains and a locked wooden door. He told me it was for storage. He told me never to go inside. The first time he locked me in there, I realized that room wasn't for old furniture. It was for me. I remember the sound of the key, a tiny click that echoed like a scream. My heartbeat slammed against my chest as footsteps faded down the hall. I sat alone on the cold floor, staring at the walls that held the stories of every time I said no, and he pretended not to hear. He liked calling himself family, but real family doesn't turn love into a weapon. I tried to tell Mom once. I waited until he left for work and whispered everything into her trembling hands. But she looked at me like I was broken glass, dangerous to touch, easier to sweep away. "He loves you," she said. "You must have misunderstood." I didn't misunderstand. I just didn't matter enough. That night was the first time I thought about dying. Not because I wanted my life to end, but because I wanted the fear to stop. I wanted silence, real silence. Not the kind that came with a locked door and the sound of someone's breath on the other side. School became my only escape. I sat in the back of class pretending I was invisible. I wore long sleeves even when the heat made others faint. I stopped raising my hand. I stopped laughing. I stopped being 16. One afternoon, I stayed late to finish a project. Mrs. Thompson, my English teacher, touched my arm gently and asked if I was okay. I looked at her and almost cried. The question, so simple, so soft, felt like a lifeline thrown into an ocean I was drowning in. But I shook my head. Lies were safer. Walking home that day, I prayed he wouldn't be there. I prayed the house would be empty. But his truck sat in the driveway like a warning sign. He opened the door before I reached it, smiling with the kind of smile that made my stomach drop. "Where were you?" he asked. My voice broke. "School." He brushed my hair from my face and said, "You're my responsibility now." Responsibility. That was his favorite word. He locked the door behind me. My freedom stayed on the other side. That night, I cried into my pillow until sleep felt like mercy. But in the middle of the night, the sound of the key returned. Click. The door opened. Fear walked inside. I learned that monsters don't hide under the bed. They sleep in the room next to yours. Time blurred after that. Days became walls closing in. I memorized the sound of footsteps, the smell of his cologne, the shadow he cast under the door. I counted minutes until morning like numbers could save me. Every sunrise meant I had survived another night. Every sunset meant I had to try again. One day I found an old razor blade in the bathroom. I held it in my hand and imagined how quiet everything would become. The thought terrified me and comforted me. I was 16. 16 shouldn't hurt that much. But before the blade touched my skin, I heard a laugh outside. Not his. A group of kids racing their bikes down the street, free and loud and alive. Something inside me cracked open. A tiny voice, buried under fear, whispered, "You deserve to live." I put the razor down. Not because I believed that voice, but because I wanted to try. I didn't know it yet, but that voice would become my future. The girl who once thought death was her only escape would one day learn how to break the lock. I used to stare into mirrors and search for signs that I was still me. My reflection felt like a stranger wearing my skin. My eyes looked older than 16. My smile was gone. My shoulders curled inward like I was trying to disappear. Some mornings, I stood at the sink brushing my hair, and I'd hear his footsteps coming down the hall. My stomach would twist so hard it made me nauseous. I learned how to breathe quietly, how to move quietly, how to think quietly. Survival became my hobby. Silence became my language. At school, I watched other girls talk about dances, crushes, weekend plans. Their biggest fear was failing a math test. Mine was making it home alive, but I envied them. Not because they were beautiful or popular, though most of them were, but because they were free. They moved like nothing in the world could touch them. One day, I caught myself thinking, if they lived in my house for one night, they would never smile again. I hated that thought. It made me feel cruel. But trauma changes the way you think. It makes you measure happiness like food you're afraid will run out. Mrs. Thompson, yes, the same teacher who asked if I was okay, pulled me aside again. Your writing has changed, she said softly. Your stories, they hurt, I shrugged. Just fiction. But she looked at me like she knew better. I wondered sometimes if she'd smell fear on me. If anyone did. If people could tell when a girl was breaking from the inside out. One afternoon, I stayed late again. I pretended it was because of homework, but truthfully, I just didn't want to go home. When I finally forced myself to walk back, the sun was already setting. My heart beat faster with each step. His truck wasn't there. For a moment so small yet so precious. I felt relief. I walked inside, dropped my backpack, and turned on the kitchen light. I poured a glass of water and stood there, tasting freedom in sips. Then headlights flashed through the window. My relief shattered. I put the glass down too fast. It fell, hit the counter, and cracked. I didn't move. Breaking something gave him an excuse to be angry. Anger made everything worse. When he walked in, he saw the broken glass immediately. What happened? His voice was calm. Too calm. I dropped it, I whispered. He stepped closer, inspected the crack, then looked at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You should be more careful, Grace. Careful. Always careful. Careful not to upset him. Careful not to breathe too loudly. Careful not to exist too much. He walked away, humming a song under his breath, the same way someone might hum while sharpening a knife. That night, he didn't lock me in the yellow room. That might sound like mercy. It wasn't. Freedom with him only meant fear had more space to chase me. I slept curled against the farthest corner of my bed, fully dressed, shoes on, ready to run, except there was nowhere to go. A few days later, Mom found a note I had written. I wasn't planning to give it to her. I wrote it during a moment of panic, a moment where I needed to let the truth spill out somewhere. She stormed into my room, shaking the paper at me. What is this? She whispered harshly. I tried to speak. My voice tangled. It's true, Mom. Shh. She slapped her hand over my mouth, eyes wide. You will destroy us, she hissed. Do you want that? Us? There was no us. There was him. And there was me. And she had already chosen a side. Her silence hurt more than the locked door ever could. That night, she didn't come to tuck me in. She didn't kiss my forehead. She closed her bedroom door and left me alone with him. I learned something that day. Sometimes the person you beg to save you is the one who throws the key away. The next morning at school, I shook so badly I spilled coffee on my desk. A girl named Nia, someone who had never spoken more than a polite hi, handed me napkins and whispered, Hey, everything okay? I almost told her right there. Almost. Yeah, I lied. Just tired. But she touched my arm gently before leaving. A tiny gesture, one that kept me breathing. That afternoon, I sat in front of the mirror brushing my hair, and I saw my hands trembling. I stared at my reflection and whispered to myself, I'm still here. I'm still here, even if I didn't believe it. And then something changed. A new family moved into the house across the street. A mom, a dad, 2 kids, one of them a boy my age named Noah. He waved at me once from his mailbox. Just a simple wave. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Someone saw me. Not my fear or my silence. Me. The locked room didn't feel as airtight anymore, because suddenly there was a window. A tiny glimpse of a world outside, a world I still wanted to live in. Noah didn't know he was saving me. He didn't know he was the reason I started opening my curtains a little each morning. He didn't know that one small wave made me believe the world still had people worth trusting. He was just living his life, laughing with friends on the porch, playing basketball in the driveway, helping his dad carry groceries inside. Ordinary moments. Moments I watched from the safety of a curtained shadow. One afternoon at school, he walked past me in the hallway. Our eyes met. He smiled. I froze. My heart stumbled, unsure whether joy or fear was chasing it. You're Grace, right? He asked, hearing my name from someone who didn't twist it into something dark. It felt like a gift. I nodded. I just moved in across from you. We should hang out sometime. My chest tightened. Hanging out meant leaving the lines I carefully walked every day. It meant risk. It meant he might see how broken I was. But I managed a soft, maybe. He smiled again before leaving. And for once, the echo of footsteps didn't terrify me. When I got home that day, I noticed the porch swing creak in the wind. I used to love swings. Now, everything that moved without permission scared me. I walked inside quietly, praying he'd already be in another room. He wasn't home. The air inside the house felt different, lighter, breathable. I grabbed my backpack and sat at the kitchen table. The silence was kind for once. It didn't stalk me. It didn't wait for me to fail. I finished all my homework early. A small victory. Then I heard the front door. He stepped inside, keys jingling. I flinched. Homework? He asked, glancing at the papers. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the table. Good girl. Those 2 words cut deeper than any scream. I wondered how praise could feel like a threat. He cooked dinner that night, spaghetti, and asked me to set the table. I kept my hands steady even though the plates shook. We ate in silence until he said, "You're quieter lately." "I'm fine," I whispered. "Your mother says you're acting strange. I hope you're not lying to her." I swallowed hard. Lies were survival, he smiled then. But I always know the truth. That night I sat by my bedroom window, hands pressed against the glass, watching the lights in Noah's house. He laughed loudly enough that I could almost hear it. A real laugh, the kind that comes from a life without locked rooms, and something inside me dared to hope. The next day at school, I asked Mrs. Thompson if I could stay late to help organize books. She agreed immediately, her face brightening like she'd been waiting for me to ask for something. Anything. We spent the hour rearranging novels, paperbacks with covers falling apart, thick classics with dusty pages. I scanned each title, wondering how many of these stories were written by someone who once felt trapped too. "Grace," she said from behind me. "You're writing?" "It's afraid." I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. "Maybe I'm just not that good," she shook her head. "You're talented. Painfully talented. And pain," her eyes softened. "Pain usually comes from somewhere." I looked at the floor because I didn't have the strength to tell the truth. Not yet, she didn't push. But before I left, she handed me a small notebook. "For your thoughts," she said. "Not the ones you turn into homework. The ones you hide." I held it like it was fragile. Like I was. When I got home, his truck wasn't in the driveway. Relief swept over me. I hurried inside, ran upstairs, and locked my bedroom door. Not because it would keep him out. Locks meant nothing in that house. But because pretending to be safe was better than knowing I wasn't. I opened the notebook. The pages smelled like new beginnings. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "I want to live." I stared at the sentence for a long time. I hadn't written it as a plea. I wrote it as a promise. Later that evening, Noah knocked on our front door. I heard voices downstairs, his cheerful tone and my mother's polite, distant replies. Then his voice floated up the stairs. "Is Grace home?" My breath caught. Footsteps approached my room. I shoved the notebook under my mattress, heart hammering. Mom cracked the door open just enough to glare at me. "Your friend is here," she whispered sharply. "Come downstairs, friend." The word felt beautiful and dangerous all at once. I followed her downstairs. Noah stood there holding a notebook identical to mine. He must have bought it on his way home. "Hey," he said, sounding happy just to see me. "Thought maybe we could study together sometime." My mother watched us closely. Too closely. I forced a small smile. "Sure," I said quietly. He left soon after. But hope stayed behind. When I went back to my room, I looked out the window again. Noah was still in his driveway looking up at my house. When he saw me, he raised his hand in a small, gentle wave, and for the first time, I waved back. That night, I slept with the notebook beside me. Not because it could protect me, but because it reminded me that tomorrow might be worth surviving. The notebook became my anchor. Every day after school, I wrote about small victories, like breathing without panicking when his footsteps came near, or saying a full sentence without crying. Every night, I scribbled plans, strategies, and even little lies that would keep me safe. I realized survival wasn't just staying alive. It was preparing to live. I called it my escape blueprint. I started with the windows. I measured them, noted which ones opened easiest, which had screens I could lift, which faced alleys or streets. I studied the locks on doors, testing which ones could be turned quietly, which ones made noise. Each observation felt like reclaiming power bit by bit. Then came the timing. I watched his schedule carefully. He was predictable in little ways. Coffee at 7, a morning walk at 8, brief trips to the store, TV shows he never missed. My survival depended on knowing when he would be away. I mapped it all on a small page in the notebook. But survival wasn't just about locks and windows. It was about people. I needed someone to believe me, someone to help me get out. That's where Mrs. Thompson became more than a teacher. She noticed how pale I was, how tired I looked, how I flinched at every small noise. I trusted her more than anyone in that house. One afternoon, I stayed late again under the guise of organizing books. When we were alone, I whispered, I need help. I can't stay there anymore." Her eyes widened in shock, then softened. "Grace, I'm going to help you. You have a safe place to go, I promise. But we need a plan, and we need to be careful." Her words were the first lifeline I had ever felt in months. I realized then that hope wasn't just a dream. It was a plan. That night, I set my alarm an hour earlier than usual. I practiced moving silently through the house, stepping over floorboards that creaked. I packed a small bag, a few clothes, some money I had saved from birthday gifts, my notebook, and my favorite necklace. Each item felt like a talisman, a reminder that I was still myself and that I deserved more than fear. Days passed. Every morning I looked out at Noah's house. Sometimes he was outside, sometimes not. Sometimes I waved, sometimes I just watched. But he became my symbol of freedom, the life waiting outside these walls. One Friday evening, my mother went to her book club, leaving me alone with him. I stayed in my room, pretending to read while my bag waited under the bed. My heart pounded when I heard him moving around downstairs. I counted each step. 5 steps to the hallway, 2 to the kitchen. Finally, he left the house to take out the trash. I exhaled quietly. It was my moment. I waited until the sound of his truck door slamming faded. Then I grabbed my bag, held my breath, and moved. I crept down the stairs, silent as a shadow. The front door loomed like freedom itself. I checked the locks. Smooth. I turned the handle slowly, praying the hinges didn't squeak. Then, I stepped outside. The cool night air hit me like the first breath after drowning. I ran, my legs burned. My bag bounced against my side. My chest heaved. But I ran. For the first time in months, I ran not out of fear, but toward life. I didn't look back. I reached the street, and there was Noah. He held a flashlight and a backpack, waiting. Just as we had planned with Mrs. Thompson. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I think I am." We ran together toward her car, toward the safe place, toward the life I had almost given up on. That night, for the first time, I slept without locks, without fear, without the shadow of someone who had tried to steal my childhood. I was 16, and I had reclaimed my life. The first morning in Mrs. Thompson's safe home felt unreal. Sunlight poured through the windows, warm and steady. I didn't have to count footsteps or listen for keys. I didn't have to measure my words or my breath. For the first time, silence was not a threat. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my notebook, and reread the first line I had written. I want to live. I had said it months ago in secret, when I still felt trapped. Now I finally meant it fully. Every page that followed was filled with fear, strategy, hope, and tiny victories. Each word a step toward reclaiming myself. Mrs. Thompson brought breakfast, but I couldn't eat. I just stared at the window, listening to birds. Their songs felt like a chorus welcoming me back to life. The world was alive, and for the first time, so was I. Not just surviving, but ready to live. Later, she sat beside me. "You're safe now," she said. "Yes," I whispered. "I think I am, and I meant it." Weeks passed. I went to therapy regularly. I spoke about my stepfather, my mother, my fear. I told the truth of every lock, every shadow, every sleepless night. I was heard. I was believed. I was supported. Slowly, the mirror no longer reflected a stranger. The girl staring back at me had survived. She had endured and come out on the other side. Her eyes were clear. Her smile returned. Not the forced plastic kind, but the small, cautious smile of someone learning to trust herself again. I returned to school eventually. People asked where I had been. I said I had taken time off. I didn't need to explain. Some things were mine alone, and that was enough. Noah became a constant friend, a reminder of the simple joy that life could bring. His laughter became a part of my daily rhythm. I learned how to live in a world that once felt like a cage. I also wrote. Every night, my notebook filled with stories of fear, courage, and hope. One day, I published a story online, sharing my experience in a safe, controlled way for other survivors. I wanted them to know you can survive. You can escape. You can live months turned into years. I grew stronger. I set boundaries. I rebuilt relationships with people who truly cared. And though the memories of that yellow room and the endless nights will always be part of me, they no longer define me. I am Grace Parker. I am 26 years old. I am alive. I am free. And for anyone out there who feels trapped in a room, in fear, in silence, remember this. The world is bigger than your prison. The sunlight waits. The door can open. And hope is stronger than any lock. I survived. And you can too.